Welcome, dear friend, to this peaceful corner of the night, a space thoughtfully created for your mind to gently unwind and your body to deeply restore. Tonight, we begin a tranquil journey through the timeless clarity of Buddhist philosophy, exploring practical teachings that cradle you into restful sleep and nourish your inner sanctuary. As you settle in, notice the quiet miracle of this shared moment. Wherever you are in the world, we are all united in our collective intention for peace. Before you drift into sleep, you're warmly invited to share your location and time in the comments below. This small act helps connect our global community and reminds each of us how universal the search for tranquility truly is. This evening's meditation offers the foundational wisdom of the Buddha's teachings, not as strict doctrine, but as friendly tools to help free yourself from mental burdens and create deep, soothing refuge within. If this haven brings you comfort, please consider subscribing now to support this peaceful space and keep it open for others navigating life's storms. Your presence and simple support help sustain the gentle light, guiding us all towards deep relaxation and clarity, allowing these ancient teachings to quietly work their healing in our busy, modern world. Siddhartha's first steps. Our journey begins not with the fully awakened Buddha, but with the young prince Siddhartha Gautama, born into unimaginable luxury within the sheltered walls of his royal palace, where every possible pleasure was meticulously catered to, and every hint of suffering was deliberately kept far from his sensitive view. His early life was a tapestry woven with silks, music, and eternal youth, a golden cage designed by his protective father, King Suddhodana, who had been warned by seers that his son was destined to become either a great world ruler or a spiritual savior, an outcome the king desperately hoped to prevent by engineering a flawless, blissful existence for his heir. This initial setting, rich with material comfort and devoid of pain, serves as a powerful reminder that external circumstances, no matter how perfect they seem, can never fully satisfy the deepest yearning of the human spirit for meaning and enduring peace. Though he possessed everything the world deemed valuable, wealth, beauty, power, and love, a subtle, persistent undercurrent of unease began to stir within the young Siddhartha, a quiet, insistent whisper that the dazzling superficiality of palace life was masking a deeper, more fundamental reality. This is a feeling that resonates deeply within our own contemporary lives, where material achievement often fails to fill the void of existential longing, prompting us to pause, even in our own comfortable beds tonight, and question the true source of happiness. His restlessness grew not from a lack of things, but from a burgeoning intellectual curiosity and a deep, intuitive sense that the gilded perfection of his surroundings was inherently unstable and conditional, destined ultimately to collapse under the weight of time's relentless passing. The royal court was a masterpiece of denial, employing elaborate measures to ensure that Siddhartha only encountered scenes of vitality and joy, successfully cloistering him from the harsh realities of human existence for the entirety of his youth, an isolation that only intensified the power of the truth when it finally managed to pierce the protective barriers. We often build similar, smaller walls in our own minds, avoiding thoughts of loss, change, or decay, hoping to preserve a temporary happiness that we know deep down is fundamentally impossible to sustain, clinging tightly to what must inevitably shift and fade away. This early phase of Siddhartha's life teaches us the universal lesson that true understanding requires facing the totality of existence, not just the pleasant fragments we prefer to embrace in our waking hours. As the prince matured, the natural curiosity of his mind began to override the restrictive protocols of the palace, prompting him to occasionally venture outside the familiar manicured gardens, seeking a glimpse of the real world that his attendants worked so frantically to conceal. These forbidden excursions were the first deliberate acts of inquiry into the nature of reality, small but crucial shifts in intention that set the stage for his entire spiritual trajectory, moving him from passive enjoyment to active seeking. Think of this quiet determination as you prepare for sleep. It is the gentle, internal nudge toward deeper self-awareness that often precedes great moments of internal clarity, a willingness to look beyond the immediate sensory input and ask the deeper, more profound questions about our own transient existence. The palace grounds, while beautiful, eventually became a symbol of confinement, a luxurious prison holding the spiritual seeker captive within the confines of predictable, repetitive sensory experiences, which, while initially distracting, ultimately failed to engage the deepest regions of his intellectual and moral consciousness. Every beautiful dancer, every perfectly ripened fruit, every melody composed solely for his pleasure, eventually circled back to the same hollow conclusion. These things were temporary and could not provide the ultimate, unshakable foundation for lasting peace that his soul instinctively craved. Allow your own attachments and daily preoccupations to soften now, recognizing them as equally beautiful, yet ultimately temporary distractions from the quiet core of your being. The profound realization that all sensory pleasure, by its very nature, fades and transforms into a memory or a craving, began to plant the seeds of philosophical inquiry within Siddhartha's mind, making the pursuit of worldly power or prolonged comfort seem utterly meaningless in the face of inevitable decay. This concept of the transient nature of joy is central to the Buddhist understanding of suffering. It is not the joy itself that causes pain, but the attachment to its permanence and the subsequent sorrow when it naturally concludes. We often experience this microcycle every evening, mourning the end of the day or worrying about the demands of tomorrow, instead of simply accepting the present moment as a complete, self-contained experience that is allowed to simply be. Siddhartha's youthful existence, for all its material perfection, lacked the essential ingredient of exposure to the universal human condition, that shared experience of fragility and dependence that binds all sentient beings together in a fundamental vulnerability. He was unaware of the quiet heroism of those who endured daily hardships with grace, or the profound lessons embedded within the cycles of aging and loss, lessons that are prerequisites for true wisdom. Let us take comfort tonight in the shared reality of our humanity, recognizing that every small ache or worry we feel connects us intrinsically to the vast, sleeping ocean of human experience, reducing the feeling of isolated struggle and replacing it with a quiet, collective solidarity. This sheltered naivety, however, preserved a pure, uncontaminated compassion in the young prince, a heart that had not yet been hardened by the defensive cynicism that often arises from repeated exposure to worldly disillusionment and pain. When the truth finally presented itself, his response was immediate and untainted by personal fear, demonstrating a capacity for profound empathy that would later define his entire spiritual path and the compassion-driven core of the Dharma. As you drift closer to sleep, try to cultivate this gentle, pure-hearted compassion toward yourself, treating any inner discomfort or self-criticism with the same unwavering soft kindness you would offer a cherished, vulnerable friend. It is said that wisdom often begins with a quiet, persistent dissatisfaction with the status quo, an internal compass pointing toward a truth that exists beyond the superficial layer of immediate experience, demanding a deeper, more rigorous investigation into the nature of reality. Siddhartha's initial steps were characterized by this very gentle yet firm intellectual disquiet, recognizing that the external world was inherently incapable of providing the ultimate security he knew existed somewhere within the structure of consciousness itself. This nightly surrender to sleep is itself a miniature act of philosophical questioning, a trust that letting go of control will lead to a deeper, more necessary form of renewal and understanding. This quiet, internal movement from superficial contentment to profound questioning is the true beginning of the spiritual path, the moment when the mind turns inward, away from the endless, fleeting spectacle of the external world, seeking refuge in the unshakable stillness of the true self. We leave Siddhartha tonight resting on the precipice of discovery, his royal comforts no longer enough to quell the deep, resonating call of the universal suffering he intuitively knew must be addressed. We will continue his journey of profound awakening next, exploring the pivotal events that shattered his illusions and forced him onto the path of renunciation and enlightenment, guiding us gently deeper into our own peaceful slumber, the four sights and renunciation. Despite the king's desperate efforts to cocoon his son in an artificial reality of perennial spring and ceaseless pleasure, fate, or perhaps the inherent gravitational pull of truth, eventually intervened, guiding Siddhartha's chariot beyond the royal gates on a sequence of fateful, eye-opening journeys that fundamentally altered his perception of the world. These excursions were meticulously planned by the prince himself, driven by an almost magnetic urge to understand the lives of his people outside the sterile confines of the palace, leading to the legendary encounters known as the Four Sights, each one a sharp, decisive blow against his cherished youthful illusion of permanent well-being. The descriptions of the sights must be vivid, sinking into your sleepy consciousness like ancient truths. The dust of the road, the scent of the common air, the sudden, shocking reality of human fragility laid bare before him. The first sight that shattered his protective shell was the vision of an old man, frail and deeply wrinkled, his body bowed by the relentless accumulation of years, his steps unsteady and his breath shallow, a stark and undeniable testament to the universal law of decay and the ultimate destination of all living beings. Siddhartha had never before witnessed the profound physical effects of aging, having only ever seen vibrancy in youth, and the sight struck him with the chilling realization that this fate awaited him, his beloved wife, and everyone he held dear, regardless of status or wealth. He asked his charioteer, Channa, who the creature was, and upon learning that this was the common, inevitable fate of the human body, the joy and enthusiasm for his luxurious life began to drain away, replaced by a quiet, pervasive sense of somber contemplation regarding the fleeting nature of physical vitality. Soon after, the second inescapable truth presented itself in the form of a severely sick person, writhing in pain, feverish and helpless, abandoned by the comfort of robust health and struggling against the invisible, cruel grip of debilitating disease, further highlighting the precariousness of the human condition. Observing the man's suffering, Siddhartha understood that even health, that most basic prerequisite for enjoyment, was merely a temporary loan, easily recalled by the harsh forces of nature, confirming that comfort could be stripped away at any moment without warning or appeal to fairness. This encounter drove home the terrifying fragility of the physical vessel we inhabit, reminding him that the body, so meticulously cared for and celebrated in the palace, was utterly vulnerable to internal breakdown, filling his mind with a heavy realization of existential uncertainty that no amount of gold or power could ever alleviate. The third and most profoundly shocking encounter was the sight of a dead body being carried to its funeral pyre, an inanimate shell surrounded by weeping, mournful relatives, signaling the absolute and final conclusion to the cycle of physical life and the crushing permanence of loss. Death, once an abstract concept or a story whispered in shadows, was now a tangible, undeniable reality, silencing all frivolous thoughts and focusing his mind entirely on the terrifying endpoint of every path, demonstrating the futility of ambition built upon a temporary platform of existence. This encounter finalized his intellectual awakening, leaving him grappling with the unbearable weight of transience. If all that is born must inevitably die, and all that is experienced must pass, then where could true, lasting peace possibly be found that transcended these relentless cycles of birth, suffering, and expiration? The crucial shift in Siddhartha's perspective came with the fourth sight, the serene figure of a wandering ascetic, a mendicant monk who walked with an extraordinary dignity, possessing nothing, yet radiating an undeniable sense of inner peace and profound contentment that stood in stark contrast to the despair he had just witnessed. This monk, despite his poverty and lack of worldly goods, seemed completely untroubled by the concerns of the world, having voluntarily abandoned the distractions that held others captive to their worries about sickness, old age, and death, representing a viable alternative path to freedom. The sight served as a beacon of hope, showing him that liberation was possible not through accumulation or avoidance, but through conscious, intentional withdrawal from the sensory world and dedication to a life focused purely on spiritual truth. Inspired by the profound calm of the wandering ascetic, Siddhartha realized that true fulfillment was not to be found in the endless chase after pleasure, which the palace represented, nor in mere existence, which was tainted by the inevitability of suffering, but in a dedicated, singular search for the permanent cessation of suffering itself. This realization led to the Great Renunciation, a pivotal moment of selfless sacrifice where he consciously chose to abandon his royal title, his comfortable life, his beloved wife, and his infant son, stepping into the uncertainty of the unknown world in pursuit of a universal truth that would benefit all beings. This was a profound act of letting go, an absolute surrender of identity and security that mirrored the ultimate letting go we must practice every night as we transition from conscious waking to the vulnerability of deep sleep. In the dead of night, after a final quiet glance at his sleeping family, Siddhartha exchanged his luxurious garments for the simple robes of a wandering monk, cutting off the long locks of his hair as a symbolic severance from his previous identity and attachments, committing himself entirely to the rigorous path of spiritual asceticism. The act was radical, dramatic, and intensely focused, embodying a complete rejection of societal norms that prioritize comfort and worldly achievement, emphasizing the paramount importance of internal awakening above all else. Imagine the cold, liberating air on his newly shaven head, the rough feel of the simple cloth against his skin. All these sensory details reinforcing the decisive commitment to simplicity, a state we aspire to reach tonight as we simplify our own complex minds before sleep. This renunciation was not an escape from responsibility, but rather an assumption of the highest possible responsibility, the responsibility to find the cure for the universal illness of suffering that afflicted all creatures, regardless of their social standing or perceived privileges. He understood that true kingship lay not in ruling external domains, but in mastering the internal kingdom of the mind, realizing that until he understood the root cause of suffering, his wealth and power were utterly useless in the face of inevitable aging, sickness, and death. This commitment to deep inquiry provides us a gentle focus now. Let us use this time, before sleep consumes us, to similarly commit to finding internal peace, knowing that this quiet work is the most valuable endeavor we can undertake. In his newfound freedom as a spiritual seeker, Siddhartha embarked on a period of intense study and rigorous practice, initially seeking instruction from renowned yogis and ascetics of the time, diving deep into meditation techniques that aimed at transcending the limitations of ordinary consciousness. Yet, even after achieving advanced meditative states, he realized these attainments were merely temporary forms of escape, offering profound but fleeting relief from the pain of existence, ultimately failing to provide the permanent, fundamental liberation he sought. We too must be careful not to confuse temporary tranquility, achieved through distraction or avoidance, with true peace. Lasting tranquility comes only from understanding the very structure of our suffering. Thus, the stage was set for the deep, challenging work of enlightenment, initiated by the shock of the four sights, which revealed the inherent, inescapable suffering of conditioned existence, and finalized by the great renunciation, which provided the freedom and the intentional focus necessary to pursue the ultimate truth. We leave the future Buddha now as a dedicated seeker, having consciously chosen the path of austerity and deep contemplation, moving forward into the wilderness of the mind to confront the fundamental questions of life and death, guiding us gently deeper into the welcoming darkness of our own quiet, restful night. Dukkha, the noble truth of suffering. Having fully committed to his spiritual quest, the Buddha's first profound realization, forming the bedrock of all subsequent teachings, was crystallized in the first noble truth, dukkha. This term is often simplistically translated as suffering, but its true meaning is far more expansive and nuanced, encompassing the entire spectrum of existential unease, dissatisfaction, imperfection, stress, inherent unsatisfactoriness, and the persistent sense that something is fundamentally not quite right in our continuous experience of life. It points to the fundamental fact that existence, as we usually perceive it through the lens of attachment and desire, is inescapably tainted by vulnerability and instability, creating a perpetual source of discomfort, much like the subtle ache in a position we hold for too long. Dukkha manifests in three distinct layers, providing a comprehensive map of human discontent, which the Buddha laid out with painstaking clarity. The first and most obvious layer is dukkha, the suffering of ordinary pain, physical ailments, emotional trauma, separation from loved ones, and the raw, acute pain of loss or conflict that is instantly recognizable to every human being. This is the superficial layer that we spend much of our waking lives attempting to avoid, mask, or medicate, often confusing the temporary absence of this type of obvious pain with true, lasting happiness, while the deeper currents of dissatisfaction continue to flow undisturbed beneath the surface of our awareness, patiently waiting for a moment of quiet reflection to surface. The second layer is viparinama dukkha, the suffering caused by change, or the inevitable sorrow and disappointment that arises when pleasant or positive experiences inevitably shift, fade, or disappear, because everything conditioned is impermanent, anicca. Think of the quiet sadness when a beautiful sunset ends, or the disappointment when a highly anticipated event is over, leaving a subtle void in its wake. This suffering is caused not by the negative event itself, but by the mind's clinging attachment to the permanence of the pleasant moment. This form of dukkha reminds us that clinging to joy is precisely what converts temporary happiness into future suffering, emphasizing the profound importance of gentle, moment-to-moment acceptance. The third and most subtle form, sankhara dukkha, is the suffering inherent in conditioned existence itself, meaning that even neutral or seemingly content states are inherently unsatisfactory, because they are built upon unstable, impermanent foundations. The five clinging aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. This is the deep structural instability of being, the constant, low-level thrum of unease that we try to fill with activity, food, or constant sensory input, arising from the very fact that we are a collection of fleeting processes, not a fixed, solid, and eternal entity. This structural dukkha reveals that the quest for permanent happiness within the realm of conditioned reality is a fundamentally flawed endeavor, setting the stage for the exploration of nirvana. The Buddha's teaching on dukkha is not a pessimistic assertion that life is merely miserable, but rather an intensely pragmatic diagnosis, insisting that we must first acknowledge the reality of the ailment before any true healing can begin. It is an invitation to look honestly, without flinching, at the way we construct our experience and identify the fundamental flaws in our habitual pursuit of conditional happiness, thereby transforming ignorance into wisdom. Tonight, as we lie here in the calm darkness, allow the quiet acknowledgement of any deep-seated dissatisfaction to surface without judgment, recognizing this internal honesty as the first necessary step toward true tranquility and deep, unshakable peace. To understand dukkha is to understand the nature of attachment, recognizing that the insistence upon permanence in a world defined by change is the root psychological error that locks us into cycles of distress and disappointment. When we grasp at pleasure, we are setting ourselves up for the pain of separation. When we avoid pain, we ensure that its eventual appearance will be even more shocking and overwhelming, proving the universal truth that resistance only intensifies suffering. The teaching encourages us to soften our resistance, to release the tight grip of expectation, and to simply allow the ebb and flow of conditioned reality to pass through us unimpeded. A powerful quote, often associated with this teaching, though not a direct Zen citation, captures the spirit of the first truth. What is impermanent is dukkha. This pithy statement connects the two core insights of the Buddha, impermanence, anicca, and suffering, dukkha, showing that the inherent instability of phenomena is precisely why they fail to provide lasting satisfaction. If we can internalize the simple wisdom that nothing lasts, then the letting go becomes easier, transforming the expected loss from a catastrophic shock into a simple, natural conclusion to a temporary event. We reflect now on the subtle ways dukkha manifests in our own lives, not necessarily as screaming pain, but perhaps as the subtle anxiety before sleep, the quiet worry about the next day, or the persistent feeling that we have not yet done or achieved enough to feel truly secure. These small, insistent feelings are manifestations of sankhara dukkha, the inherent stress of the conditioned self trying desperately to maintain control over a reality that is fundamentally uncontrollable and constantly moving. The realization of dukkha serves as the essential catalyst for the spiritual journey, acting like a constant, gentle pressure that nudges the seeker away from the fruitless pursuit of worldly fixations and towards the transformative liberation of the path. Without this honest recognition of the omnipresent nature of unsatisfactoriness, we would remain perpetually trapped in the cycle of chasing pleasure and avoiding pain, never addressing the deeper structural cause of our existential stress. As we conclude our reflection on the First Noble Truth, allow the weight of your understanding to deepen your sense of surrender, recognizing that the acceptance of dukkha paradoxically leads to its alleviation, because resistance is released. We leave the Buddha tonight having clearly defined the problem, the universal experience of dissatisfaction. And next, we will turn our attention to the second noble truth, samudaya, which reveals the precise origin of this pervasive human predicament, guiding us further down the quiet, reflective pathway towards profound, uninterrupted sleep. Samudaya, the origin of suffering. Having established the undeniable reality of widespread dissatisfaction and inherent suffering, or dukkha, the Buddha then turned his enlightened attention to the crucial matter of its root cause, presenting the second noble truth, samudaya, which translates powerfully as the origin or the arising of suffering. This profound insight pinpointed the precise mechanism that traps beings in the cyclical wheel of suffering, asserting with compassionate clarity that pain is not arbitrary, but rather springs forth from a single, deeply ingrained psychological impulse. This central cause is identified as tanha, often translated as craving, thirst, or desire, which serves as the powerful, insistent engine of psychological distress, compelling us relentlessly to grasp and cling, creating friction and subsequent pain against the ever-changing, impermanent fabric of reality. This relentless thirst, or tanha, manifests in three primary, interlinked forms, each contributing uniquely to the perpetuation of our inner conflict and preventing the quiet settling of the mind necessary for true rest. Firstly, there is kama tanha, the craving for sensual pleasures, an insistent urge for agreeable sights, sounds, tastes, smells, and physical sensations, which drives the endless consumption of experiences and objects in the futile hope that external input will somehow fill the internal void. Secondly, there is bhava tanha, the craving for existence, for becoming, or the tenacious desire to be a certain person, to achieve a specific status, or to perpetuate our current self and identity into the future, a deep-seated fear of annihilation or insignificance. The third and final form of craving is paradoxically destructive, known as vibhava-tanha, the craving for non-existence or annihilation, which expresses itself as the desire to push away, suppress, or terminate unpleasant experiences, including the fierce wish for suffering itself to cease instantly, often leading to feelings of aversion, despair, or self-harm when life becomes overwhelmingly difficult. All three forms, craving for pleasure, craving for existence, and craving for non-existence, are fundamentally characterized by an aggressive reaching or pushing, a refusal to accept the reality of the present moment exactly as it is, generating the intense psychological heat that prevents the cooling of the mind, keeping us restless and perpetually dissatisfied, even in moments of apparent calm. Imagine the feeling of a profound, intense craving. It is a restless, feverish energy that tightens the chest and makes the mind race, forcing your attention away from the quiet simplicity of the now, demanding immediate gratification or relief through the acquisition of something external. This internal pressure is fundamentally the fuel of suffering, for once the object of desire is attained, it merely breeds further craving, either for more of the same or for a new, different object, creating an insatiable, self-perpetuating cycle that guarantees future disappointment when that temporary satisfaction inevitably fades, as all conditioned things must. The quiet lesson here, as you sink deeper into the cushions, is that the energy wasted in chasing or rejecting is the very energy that keeps you awake and alert, far from the deep peace you seek. The fundamental driver lurking beneath all forms of tanha is avidya, or ignorance, which is the failure to perceive reality correctly, specifically the misunderstanding of the three marks of existence: impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and non-self, anatta. Because we ignorantly believe that things are permanent, that we have a solid, fixed self to protect, and that lasting satisfaction can be found in unstable external forms, we are compelled to cling desperately, mistaking the shadow for the substance and generating the painful attachments that define our suffering. This ignorance is not a simple lack of information, but a deeply woven perceptual error, a fog that distorts the simple clarity of the world, making the quiet task of waking up tonight a journey of gentle, persistent clarity rather than forceful effort. There is a profound Zen maxim that resonates perfectly with the teaching of samudaya, gently advising that when you understand that the attachment to the cup is the problem, you will stop trying to fill it. This aphorism beautifully encapsulates the essence of the second noble truth, urging us to shift our focus from the content of our desires to the fundamental painful activity of desiring itself. It reveals that peace is not found by succeeding in the endless task of fulfilling every want, but by the radically simple act of recognizing and releasing the insistent habit of craving, which is the source of all the turbulence and noise in the otherwise silent sanctuary of the mind. Consider how this craving plays out in the quiet hours just before true sleep descends. Perhaps it is the desperate wish for the mind to stop thinking, vibhava tanha, or the intense desire for the feeling of comfort and security achieved last night, bhava tanha, or even the mild sensory craving for the warmth of the blanket just slightly tighter, kama tanha. Each of these small, insistent internal demands creates a subtle tension, pulling the body and mind out of surrender and into a posture of resistance, thereby ensuring that the very thing we desire, deep rest, remains just slightly out of reach, illustrating perfectly how attachment is the barrier to freedom. The deep understanding of samudaya forces us to confront the fact that since the world is characterized by anicca, impermanence, any attempt to hold on to a person, a feeling, or an outcome is inherently doomed to fail, thereby generating suffering. If we cling to the beautiful, it must pass. If we cling to our youth, it must decay. If we cling to our identity, it must shift. And this clash between the mind's rigid demands for permanence and the universe's fluid reality of change is the precise birthplace of our persistent existential stress. Therefore, letting go of the craving is simply aligning our internal state with the undeniable, inevitable reality of impermanence, allowing the mind to finally rest in the flow instead of fighting against the tide. To overcome the arising of suffering, the path must necessarily involve the gentle, moment-to-moment de-escalation of the craving impulse, recognizing the intense energy of desire without immediately acting upon it or condemning it, observing it like a passing cloud or a distant sound. This requires a profound stillness and a commitment to radical non-reaction, allowing the energy of tanha to burn out harmlessly, rather than reigniting it with subsequent thoughts of frustration or entitlement, thereby preventing the cycle of grasping from taking hold in the tranquil refuge of the present moment. As we move on, we hold the understanding that suffering is a result of a specific cause, craving driven by ignorance, and this clear diagnosis immediately implies that if the cause is removed, the effect must also cease. This crucial step prepares us for the profound relief and ultimate promise of the third noble truth, which shifts our focus entirely from the problem and its origin to the absolute and attainable possibility of liberation, inviting us into the deep, welcoming silence of nirvana, where the fires of grasping have finally been completely extinguished. Nirodha, the cessation of suffering. With the problem of suffering, dukkha, identified, and its origin, samudaya, clearly diagnosed as craving, tanha, the Buddha offered the third noble truth, nirodha, which provides the profoundly hopeful assurance that the complete cessation of suffering is entirely possible, a state attainable through the total and final extinguishing of craving and attachment. Nirodha means cessation or extinction, and it points directly to the state known as nirvana or nibbana, which literally translates from the ancient languages as blowing out or extinguishing the flame, specifically referring to the extinguishing of the three fires of greed, hatred, and delusion that perpetually scorch the mind. Nirvana is often misunderstood in the West as a paradise or heaven to be reached after death. But within the practical framework of Buddhist philosophy, it is a profound and tangible state of being that can be realized right here, right now, while the body and mind are still functioning, representing the absolute endpoint of emotional and psychological turbulence. It is not an existence filled with pleasant sensations, nor is it a place to visit. Instead, it is the radical absence of the struggle and friction caused by the demanding self, the complete release from the cycles of attachment and aversion, leaving behind a deep, inherent, and unshakable peace that transcends all conditioned experience. Imagine the absolute stillness of a deep lake on a windless night, reflecting the stars without a single ripple of disturbance, embodying a quietude that is utterly free from the turbulence of desire or the anxiety of fear. And this is the tranquility of the mind that has achieved nirvana. The senses continue to perceive, the body continues to exist, but the mental machinery that automatically translates every sensory input into a basis for grasping or aversion has been deactivated, allowing reality to be experienced in its pristine, unconditioned simplicity. This state is sometimes described as the unborn, the unmade, the unconditioned, or the deathless, because it is entirely untouched by the universal laws of impermanence and decay that govern everything else, providing the ultimate refuge for the tired mind. The incredible importance of the third noble truth lies in its declaration of possibility. It confirms that we are not destined to remain trapped in the cycle of suffering, and that liberation is not a mystical dream, but a practical state achievable through focused effort and wisdom, a goal that informs and motivates the entire path. If the Buddha had only described suffering and its cause, his teachings would have been merely a sorrowful philosophy. But by articulating nirodha, he transformed the diagnosis into a clear map toward actual freedom, providing the necessary hope and direction that allows us to gently turn away from the familiar noise and toward the radical silence. The precise mechanism for the cessation of suffering is directly related to the cessation of its cause. If tanha, craving, is completely abandoned, rooted out, and released, then the fuel for suffering is removed, and the inevitable subsequent suffering cannot arise. This is the moment of ultimate letting go, the moment when the mind recognizes the absolute futility of clinging to the temporary and simply allows things to be as they are, without demanding they be otherwise. It is a surrender that results not in defeat, but in boundless freedom, a state often described as the cool, refreshing space experienced after a fever has finally broken, and the body can simply rest without striving. This principle finds a beautiful, instructional parallel in the simple Zen practice of emptying the cup. When a respected master continues to pour tea into a student's already full cup, the tea spills everywhere, And the master calmly explains that just as the cup must first be emptied to receive new tea, the mind must be emptied of all its cravings, assumptions, and attachments before it can receive the truth of the Dharma and experience the cessation of suffering. This act of mental emptying is precisely Nirodha, the intentional and continuous release of all psychological contents that cause friction, allowing the mind to return to its original state of quiet spaciousness, making room for the profound, heavy peace of the present. Imagine your life completely stripped of the constant nagging demands of desire, no urge to check for external validation, no anxiety about future outcomes, no fierce rejection of current discomfort, simply a profound, quiet acceptance of the moment as it unfolds, free from judgment or striving. In this state of cessation, actions are performed not out of desperate need or aversion, but out of clear, present awareness and boundless compassion, marking a transition from a life driven by reactive craving to a life guided by conscious wisdom, culminating in a relaxation that is permanent and self-sustaining, providing the ultimate template for the kind of deep rest we aspire to tonight. The celebrated Zen master Dogen once offered a quiet instruction that embodies the profound peace of nirvana. If you want to attain peace, you must abandon all attachments. This simple, undeniable truth serves as a gentle lullaby, reminding us that the deep relaxation we seek is not something to be acquired through effort, but something that naturally surfaces when the heavy weight of our attachments is willingly dropped. The practice of dropping, letting go of the thought, letting go of the worry, letting go of the identity, is the active, compassionate pathway into the profound liberation promised by Nirodha. The third noble truth is the beacon of hope that illuminates the entire Buddhist path, transforming it from a merely intellectual exercise into a profoundly life-changing, practical endeavor. The confirmation that true freedom from mental suffering is not only possible, but is the ultimate, attainable potential of the human experience, provides the vital momentum needed to undertake the discipline of the path. It assures us that the work of self-observation and letting go is not in vain, guiding us tonight towards a peaceful surrender where we can taste the quietude that comes from temporarily extinguishing the daily flames of want and worry. Now, as you settle deeper into the profound comfort of your resting place, allow the understanding of Nirodha to act as a profound permission slip, granting you the freedom to cease striving, to stop chasing, and to simply rest in the knowledge that cessation is possible, preparing the way for the exploration of the fourth noble truth, Magga, which reveals the practical map, the noble eightfold path that leads directly to this ultimate, unshakable state of peace and deep restorative sleep. Magga, the path to cessation. Having established the profound assurance that the total cessation of suffering, Nirodha, is an attainable reality, the Buddha presented the final and most practical of the Four Noble Truths, known as Magga, or the Path. Whoa! This truth provides the precise, systematic, and carefully constructed route, the Noble Eightfold Path, that leads directly from the tumultuous reality of suffering to the unshakable stillness of nirvana, serving as the essential roadmap for ethical conduct, mental discipline, and ultimate wisdom. It is the practical framework that transforms philosophical understanding into lived experience, a middle way deliberately avoiding the extremes of excessive indulgence and severe asceticism, offering a balanced and sustainable journey towards inner peace that can be practiced by anyone, regardless of their station in life, guiding us tonight toward the deep, restful quietude that is the natural state of an unburdened mind. The Noble Eightfold Path is elegantly organized into three primary, overarching categories, designed to be cultivated simultaneously and synergistically, where progress in one area naturally supports and strengthens the others, creating a virtuous cycle of purification and insight. These three essential groupings are wisdom, panna, which encompasses right view and right intention, providing the intellectual and emotional clarity needed to understand the truth; ethical conduct, sila, covering right speech, right action, and right livelihood, establishing a foundation of moral integrity that settles the conscience and calms the restless body; and finally, mental discipline, samadhi, comprising right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, which trains the mind to be stable, present, and deeply focused, facilitating the ultimate realization of nirvana and enabling the deepest possible surrender to sleep. As we gently contemplate this map, visualize the Eightfold Path not as a linear checklist of discrete items, but rather as 8 spokes emanating from the central hub of a wheel, all necessary and mutually supporting for the wheel to turn smoothly, carrying the traveler toward liberation. The practice is not about perfecting each spoke sequentially, but about continuously refining all 8 simultaneously, allowing the steady, balanced momentum of the wheel to guide you effortlessly. The strength of this path lies in its wholeness and its ethical foundation. By living kindly and truthfully, the mind naturally clears, making the deeper work of meditation possible, thereby providing the necessary tranquility for the body to relax completely into the mattress and find peace. The entire path is rooted in the practical experience of the Buddha himself, drawing directly from his own journey of intense struggle and eventual awakening, offering us a method proven through rigorous testing and compassionate insight, ensuring that we do not have to wander aimlessly or repeat unnecessary mistakes. He realized that intellectual understanding alone is insufficient, and moral behavior without mental clarity is unstable. Thus, the integration of wisdom, ethics, and concentration becomes the indispensable trinity of practice, acting like the 3 interwoven strands of a sturdy rope, capable of pulling us out of the turbulent waters of suffering and mooring us safely in the peaceful harbor of the present moment. The ethical foundation, sila, is strategically placed early in the path because a mind plagued by guilt, remorse, or conflict cannot possibly achieve the deep concentration necessary for transformative insight. The restless agitation generated by unwholesome actions or words keeps the mind perpetually on guard, preventing true surrender. Therefore, the commitment to harmlessness and honesty, the essence of right speech, right action, and right livelihood, serves as the critical prerequisite, creating an environment of safety and integrity, allowing the body to feel secure and the breath to deepen naturally, preparing the fertile ground for the seeds of wisdom to take root and flourish without disturbance or fear. It is important to understand that the path, magga, is a description of the cultivation of wholesome qualities, moving away from extremes and toward balance, clarity, and compassion. It is not a set of rigid, self-punishing rules, but a compassionate set of guidelines for living in harmony with the natural laws of the universe, reducing friction and maximizing tranquility. By observing the flow of our speech, the intention behind our actions, and the effects of our livelihood, we become conscious co-creators of our reality, choosing intentionally to generate conditions that promote peace, both internally and externally, thereby facilitating the deep, unforced relaxation that precedes restorative sleep, free from the heavy weight of regret. Within the context of finding rest, The Noble Eightfold Path acts as an anchor. When the mind is racing and the body feels agitated, simply focusing on any element of the path, perhaps striving for right effort to gently redirect attention back to the breath, or reaffirming right intention to be kind to oneself, can immediately interrupt the cycle of agitation and bring a sense of grounding. This path is available at any moment, offering a tangible structure to hold on to when the mind begins to feel adrift in the chaos of planning, worrying, or remembering, serving as a reliable refuge in the quiet darkness of the night, guiding you gently back toward the shore of inner stillness. A foundational quote perfectly summarizing the essence of the path is, "Cease to do evil, learn to do good, cleanse your own mind. This is the advice of all the Buddhas." This simple verse beautifully condenses the three trainings of ethics, wisdom, and mental discipline, reminding us that the spiritual journey is fundamentally one of inner transformation, accessible not through external rituals or complicated doctrines, but through the consistent application of these principles in our daily lives, ensuring that we are actively reducing the causes of suffering while simultaneously cultivating the causes of peace, a process which inherently promotes a state of profound natural equilibrium. The power of the path lies in its emphasis on the present moment. We do not practice right action yesterday or right concentration tomorrow, but we focus on being present, ethical, and wise right now. This constant, gentle return to the present is the primary mechanism for transcending suffering, because suffering inherently relies on the mental creation of past regrets or future anxieties, while the Noble Eightfold Path relentlessly insists on the here and now, the only place where true change and deep, restorative peace can ever be found, inviting you to release the burden of time and simply exist in the quiet comfort of this very moment. As we move on, we will begin our detailed exploration of the first two spokes, right view and right intention, the essential components of the wisdom section, which lay the conceptual groundwork for the rest of the path, providing the necessary clarity and motivation to effectively engage with the practices of ethics and concentration. Allow yourself to feel the comforting structure of this map, knowing that you are not lost, but are being guided by the ancient wisdom of the awakened ones, leading you softly and surely toward the deep, silent wellspring of rest and unshakable inner peace, right view and right intention, wisdom. The Noble Eightfold Path begins with the twin pillars of wisdom, Panna, introducing us to the fundamental intellectual and intuitive understanding necessary for spiritual progress, right view, Samaditthi, and right intention, Samasankappa. Right view is the crucial first step, demanding a precise, penetrating understanding of reality, particularly the profound comprehension and acceptance of the Four Noble Truths, the reality of suffering, its origin in craving, its potential cessation, and the path leading to that cessation. This view moves beyond mere intellectual agreement, transforming into a deep, unshakable conviction that permeates all subsequent thoughts and actions, acting as the clear guiding compass for the entire journey and preventing us from veering off course into unhelpful extremes. This right view is essentially seeing things exactly as they are, without the distorting filters of desire, aversion, or ignorance, allowing us to perceive the world through the lens of impermanence, anicca, and non-self, anatta, recognizing that nothing, neither our joys nor our troubles, is fixed, permanent, or personally owned. When this clear view is established, the frantic urgency to cling to pleasant experiences or desperately push away unpleasant ones naturally begins to dissolve, simply because we understand the fundamental futility of such efforts, leading to an immediate relaxation of psychological tension that significantly eases the transition into deep, undisturbed rest, releasing the mind from its self-imposed prison of rigid expectations. Accompanying and flowing directly from this foundational clarity is the second element of wisdom, right intention, samma sankappa. Intention is the volitional force behind all our actions, the deep motivation that drives our thoughts, speech, and deeds. And right intention ensures that this core motivation is skillfully aligned with the goal of liberation and compassion, moving away from selfish or reactive impulses. It is precisely defined by three powerful qualities: the intention of renunciation, non-attachment; the intention of goodwill, loving kindness; and the intention of harmlessness, compassion, purifying the heart's deepest desires. The intention of renunciation is perhaps the most transformative, involving the willingness to let go of the relentless pursuit of pleasure, comfort, and possession, recognizing that this grasping is the very source of our continuous agitation. It is the simple, quiet decision to choose freedom over bondage, even when temporary attachments feel seductive. This does not demand the immediate abandonment of all worldly possessions, but rather the internal release of the mental clinging to them, ensuring that our peace is not contingent upon external factors, allowing the mind to gently detach from the day's lingering concerns and fully surrender to the gravity of the bedding beneath you. Furthermore, right intention emphasizes the cultivation of goodwill, metta, and harmlessness, ahimsa, meaning that our deep-seated wish must be for the well-being and freedom of all beings, including ourselves, actively choosing thoughts of kindness over hostility and compassion over judgment. This conscious orientation of the heart is profoundly therapeutic because hatred, jealousy, and fear are aggressive, high-energy states that actively prevent relaxation, while thoughts of kindness are inherently expansive and soothing, creating a gentle warmth and mental spaciousness that acts as a natural sedative, preparing the emotional body for a night of deeply restorative, tranquil peace. Visualize this right intention as the gentle rudder steering the ship of your mind. While right view charts the correct course by identifying the dangers and destinations, right intention ensures the rudder is consistently turned towards safety, choosing kindness and non-harm moment by moment. When we consciously choose not to hold on to resentment or anger from the day, when we choose goodwill toward others, even those who have caused us discomfort, we actively dismantle the mental knots that hold tension in the body, allowing the shoulders to soften, the jaw to unclench, and the eyes to rest without strain. The teachings gently assure us that even if we cannot perfectly follow all 8 parts of the path, the sincere cultivation of right view and right intention is immensely powerful, as they are the source from which all other wholesome actions spring forth. A clear mind with a compassionate heart will naturally lead to right speech and right action, making the rest of the path a spontaneous and joyful unfolding rather than a difficult forced discipline. The wisdom to see clearly and the intention to act kindly are the internal conditions that guarantee internal peace, regardless of external circumstances, giving you an unshakable core of calm. A potent Zen saying relevant to this wisdom section is, "A mind that is not agitated by the past or worried about the future rests in the present." This succinctly captures the essence of right view. Understanding impermanence leads to non-agitation, and right intention, choosing peaceful non-attachment over reactive craving, both of which bring the totality of our attention back to the comfortable simplicity of this exact moment, the only place where true rest exists, anchoring the racing thoughts with the quiet certainty of wisdom. As you absorb these first two spokes, allow your body to relax into the understanding that the goal is not perfection, but continuous, gentle refinement. The path is long, but the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the clear single intention to move toward peace, right here, right now. We have established the conceptual clarity of the path. Next, we will move into the essential ethical grounding of the path, exploring right speech and right action, which further stabilize the mind and create the conditions for deep inner harmony and profound, silent sleep. Right speech and right action. Ethics. Having anchored our journey in the clarity of right view and the compassion of right intention, we now turn to the three crucial pillars that form the foundation of ethical conduct, known in Sanskrit as sila, right speech, right action, and right livelihood. These practices are not mere moral injunctions imposed from the outside, but are deeply practical tools designed to minimize the friction between ourselves and the world, ensuring that our actions and words do not create the subtle, yet persistent psychological tension that actively disturbs the tranquility needed for true rest. The most immediate benefit of cultivating ethical conduct is the creation of a clear conscience, a quiet internal state where guilt, shame, or regret find no hold, allowing the body and mind to surrender completely to the natural, gravitational pull of the earth and the deep peace of the present moment. The first essential component of sila is right speech, samavaka, demanding a mindfulness of the very fabric of our communication, recognizing that words hold profound creative and destructive power, capable of building bridges of understanding or erecting walls of conflict. Right speech is practiced by adhering to 4 simple yet transformative guidelines, always speaking the truth, refraining from slander and divisive talk, avoiding harsh, abusive, or hurtful language, and abstaining from idle chatter or frivolous gossip that drains mental energy and distracts from purposeful calm. When we commit to speaking only words that are kind, timely, and genuinely useful, we immediately lessen the internal burden of defensive posturing and worry about misunderstandings, allowing the jaw muscles to relax and the throat to soften, easing the whole system into a state of silent, unforced repose. Following closely is the practice of right action, samakamanta, which defines how we interact physically with the world, emphasizing the profound importance of non-harming, or ahimsa, as the basis of all ethical living. Right action is traditionally observed through abstaining from actions that involve taking life, stealing, or taking what is not freely given, and engaging in sexual misconduct, which means ensuring our physical relationships are conducted with respect, integrity, and consent, free from exploitation or manipulation. By diligently avoiding harmful physical deeds, we eliminate the root causes of fear and regret, ensuring that the energy we carry into the night is one of lightness and freedom, allowing the limbs to feel heavy and warm upon the comfortable surface beneath us, without any residual agitation stemming from past ethical breaches. Consider the immense energy that is consumed by maintaining a state of subtle defensiveness, the psychological weight of anticipating the consequences of past unkind words or harmful deeds. This internal anxiety is the antithesis of relaxation, forcing the nervous system to remain slightly elevated, like a ship anchored in stormy waters. Right speech and right action are the practices that secure the anchor in calm waters, quieting the nervous system by aligning our outward expressions with our deep internal intention for peace, ensuring that as you lie down tonight, There are no lingering shadows of conflict or remorse to keep your mind desperately clinging to wakefulness. The cultivation of ethical discipline is often described poetically as creating a sheltered grove for the mind, a place where the tender shoots of wisdom and concentration can grow without being constantly trampled by the wild winds of misconduct. When our actions are clumsy or cruel, the resultant self-reproach creates continuous mental chatter and emotional instability, making the deep, single-pointed focus necessary for deep sleep nearly impossible. But when the conscience is clear, the breath naturally deepens, the muscles around the eyes release, and the whole being settles into an effortless, quiet dignity that welcomes the stillness of the night without resistance. The commitment to truthfulness in right speech extends beyond merely avoiding lies. It means speaking from a place of genuine awareness and careful consideration, assessing whether our words will foster understanding and peace, or whether they will simply serve the ego's desire for attention or validation. This conscious filtering process requires a level of present moment awareness that itself is meditative, acting as an informal practice of mindfulness throughout the day, ensuring that every interaction, even mundane ones, contributes to the overall stability and calm of the mind, preparing the internal landscape for the silence that precedes true, deep sleep. Similarly, right action demands not just avoidance of the negative, but the positive cultivation of wholesome physical acts, such as generosity, offering support, and acting compassionately when the opportunity arises, reinforcing the internal sense of connection and worthiness. When we practice physical acts of kindness, the body registers this contribution to harmony, releasing the stored tension that often manifests as restlessness in the legs or tightness in the chest, replacing it with a quiet, satisfying sense of peace that permeates the very marrow of the bones, inviting the heavy, comforting blanket of exhaustion to settle fully over the body. Imagine the gentle sensation of the muscles completely letting go, the shoulders dropping away from the ears, the forehead smoothing out, and the tongue resting lightly in the mouth. This physical release is often the direct, tangible manifestation of a mind free from the burden of ethical compromise. The Buddha emphasized that the practice of sila is the great gift of safety we offer to others, and in giving that safety, we fundamentally receive it back multiplied, transforming our own experience into one of profound, unshakable security, allowing the heart to feel soft and open as it drifts toward rest. In the tradition, there is a powerful phrase, "Non-contention is the path." This idea perfectly encapsulates the aim of sila, to live in such a way that we minimize conflict, both external contention with others and internal contention with ourselves. When we cease to contend, whether through aggressive speech or selfish action, the energy previously spent on friction is freed up to fuel our peaceful presence, creating an environment where the transition from wakefulness to unconscious rest is fluid, seamless, and completely effortless, guided only by the slow, steady rhythm of our own inhalation and exhalation. As you now settle deeper into your resting posture, take a slow, mindful breath and inwardly affirm your commitment to speaking and acting with kindness and truthfulness tomorrow, allowing the quiet power of that commitment to wash away any remaining anxieties from today. This commitment is your silent promise to yourself to nurture your inner sanctuary, ensuring that the ethical foundation is strong and stable, perfectly preparing us for the next crucial steps, securing a right livelihood and engaging in the right effort to maintain this delicate, beautiful balance of peace. Right livelihood and right effort, ethics and mind. we continue our contemplation of the Noble Eightfold Path, transitioning from the broader ethical pillars to the finer points of sustainable living and mental cultivation, beginning with the final component of ethical conduct, right livelihood, sama ajiva. This principle guides us to ensure that the way we earn our living, the work we perform daily to sustain ourselves and our families, does not in any way cause harm, exploitation, or suffering to other beings. It is a profound recognition of the interconnectedness of all life, emphasizing that our economic activity must align with our spiritual commitment to non-violence and compassion, ensuring our means of survival are a source of peace, not conflict. Right livelihood specifically prohibits trades that involve direct harm, such as the manufacture or sale of weapons, dealing in living beings, like slavery, or the industrial raising of animals for slaughter, working in poisons or harmful chemicals, or selling intoxicants, as these activities inherently create conditions of suffering or clouded consciousness in the world. The wisdom here lies in understanding that even indirect harm creates a deep, unsettling dissonance within the individual. Earning money through destructive means compromises the clarity of the mind and the peace of the conscience, manifesting as an unspoken stress that undermines all attempts at deep relaxation. When our livelihood is clean and honest, contributing positively to the well-being of the community without causing exploitation, we experience an intrinsic sense of dignity and internal coherence that is profoundly restful. There is no need for mental compartmentalization, no hidden source of worry or guilt tucked away in the back of the mind, allowing the energetic channels of the body to remain open and unobstructed. This inner freedom from ethical conflict is a potent precursor to sleep, enabling the deep internal feeling of safety necessary for the nervous system to fully deactivate and transition into restorative stillness, trusting completely in the goodness of our contribution. As we conclude the Sila, ethical conduct section with right livelihood, we transition into the first spoke of Samadhi, mental discipline, right effort, samavayama. This practice is the active, continuous, and highly conscious exertion of mental energy necessary to guide our internal state, ensuring we are diligently cultivating wholesome, skillful states of mind while simultaneously abandoning unwholesome, detrimental states. It is the practice of spiritual husbandry, tending to the garden of the mind with gentle yet firm diligence, ensuring that the weeds of distraction and aversion are pulled out and the seeds of peace and focus are nourished. Right effort is systematically divided into 4 distinct yet interconnected endeavors, often called the 4 great efforts, which together form the mechanism for internal purification. First, to prevent unwholesome states of mind, like anger or craving, that have not yet arisen from arising. Second, to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Third, to cultivate wholesome states, like joy and loving kindness, that have not yet arisen. And fourth, to maintain and perfect the wholesome states that have already arisen, fostering stability. This constant, gentle management of our inner life is the key to minimizing the mental chaos that keeps us awake. This concept of right effort is fundamentally about intelligent engagement, not forceful struggle. It is the middle way between reckless indulgence and self-destructive repression. It is the soft, persistent discipline of gently redirecting the attention back to the breath or back to the calming mantra whenever the mind inevitably drifts into worry or fantasy. This effort is light, like patiently guiding a butterfly back to its flower, rather than violently trying to trap it, preventing the mind from becoming exhausted by futile inner battles, and conserving precious energy for the profound surrender of sleep. The immediate restful benefit of right effort lies in its power to interrupt the cycle of rumination. When a thought of regret or anxiety arises and threatens to carry us away, right effort is the conscious choice to recognize it, acknowledge its transient nature, and gently let it go, focusing instead on the tangible, peaceful sensations of the present moment, the weight of the blanket, the softness of the pillow, the quiet darkness enveloping the room. This consistent, compassionate redirection is the antidote to the mind's endless craving for distraction. In the context of the night, right effort is your commitment to not entertain the restless thoughts that try to seduce you back into wakefulness. It means making the gentle but firm decision to let go of the day's projects and tomorrow's worries, recognizing them as unwholesome states for this time of rest. This is a powerful, non-violent application of will, directing your mental energy toward cultivating a state of profound acceptance and stillness, allowing the inner monologue to quiet down until only the deep, silent hum of existence remains. A beautiful passage often attributed to the Buddha emphasizes the importance of balance in this effort. The string of the lute should not be too tight, nor too slack. This guidance reminds us that right effort is about finding the perfect equilibrium, where we are neither passively lazy nor anxiously overstriving, but rather engaging with life and practice with a relaxed yet attentive focus. This balance ensures sustainability and prevents the exhaustion that comes from either trying too hard to sleep or not trying at all to manage the wandering mind. As you feel the steadying comfort of the breath, reflect on the twin practices of livelihood and effort. Allow the knowledge that you strive toward harmlessness and peace in your daily life and in your inner landscape to act as a profound source of security. We have now laid the essential groundwork of wisdom and ethics, and with right effort, we have taken the first step into the deep field of mental discipline, perfectly preparing the mind for the essential final steps of mindfulness and concentration, which we will explore next, guiding you ever closer to the still, silent heart of the present moment. Right. Mindfulness and right concentration. Meditation. Having established the ethical grounding of our practice through sila, conduct, and the diligent cultivation of positive states through right effort, we now arrive at the pinnacle of the path, samadhi, the domain of deep mental discipline, comprised of right mindfulness and right concentration. These are the practices that directly stabilize the mind, dissolving the agitation and fragmentation that prevent the system from achieving deep, restorative sleep, allowing us to find that quiet, unchanging center amidst the storms of thought. Right. Mindfulness, samasati, is the gentle yet precise moment-to-moment awareness of what is happening both internally and externally, cultivated without judgment or reaction, serving as the necessary foundation upon which true, tranquil concentration can rest securely, like a still pond ready to reflect the moon. Right mindfulness, samasati, is often described simply as remembering to be present, a practice of placing the attention gently and repeatedly on the direct, undeniable experience of this exact moment, the sound of the distant wind, the warmth of the sheets against the skin, the subtle rising and falling of the chest with each breath. This unwavering yet soft attention provides an anchor against the endless torrent of memories and projections, preventing the mind from racing ahead into tomorrow's worries or sinking backward into yesterday's regrets, which are the primary culprits in disrupting the sleep cycle. Allow the heaviness of your eyelids and the slowing pace of your heart to confirm that the practice of simply being here, now, is the most profound form of action we can undertake. The practical application of sati is taught through the four foundations of mindfulness, systematically guiding our attention to four key areas of experience, beginning with the body, then feelings, then the mind, and finally, mental phenomena. This systematic approach ensures that every aspect of our existence is brought into the light of gentle awareness, leaving no corner dark for anxiety to hide and fester. As we observe the body lying here, still and heavy, and the emotions that surface, perhaps a touch of lingering restlessness or a wave of peaceful calm, we practice observing these phenomena as events passing through consciousness, rather than permanent fixtures of our identity, thereby reducing their power to disturb our deep need for rest. We begin with the mindfulness of the body, kayanupassana, a practice particularly potent for relaxation, which involves systematically bringing attention to the physical sensations of weight, temperature, contact, and movement, anchoring the scattered mind firmly in tangible reality. Notice the contact points where your body meets the bed, the press of your heels, the soft cradle of the pillow beneath your head, the reassuring weight of the blankets settling over your chest and legs. Allowing gravity to do its work without resistance, feel the bones growing heavy and the muscles softening their grip, dissolving the subtle tension held in the jaw, the shoulders, and the hips, trusting the earth to hold you securely and completely through the long, quiet hours ahead. Next, the practice moves to the mindfulness of feelings, Vedananupassana, observing whether the physical and mental sensations arising in the moment are pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and learning to observe these reactions without immediately reacting to them or building an elaborate narrative around them. When a pleasant feeling arises, we simply note it and let it flow. When an unpleasant sensation, such as a slight ache in the back or a whisper of irritation, appears, we practice refraining from judgment or aversion, recognizing it merely as energy shifting within the system. This detached observation prevents the emotional spikes that often pull us from the brink of sleep, cultivating a deep equanimity that accepts all internal weather with calm neutrality. Following this, we engage in the mindfulness of the mind, Cittanupassana, gently observing the transient state of our own consciousness, noting whether the mind is currently scattered or concentrated, dull or clear, free or bound by thoughts of desire or anger. We treat these mental states not as reflections of who we fundamentally are, but as temporary, atmospheric conditions, like clouds passing across the vast blue sky of awareness. By refusing to follow the narrative content of the thoughts and simply labeling the quality of the mind, thinking, planning, calm, we create a vital distance that prevents the mental activity from sustaining itself, leading naturally toward a profound internal silence. This diligent maintenance of awareness naturally leads into the final component of the path, right concentration, sammasamadhi, which is the practice of developing a sustained, single-pointed focus, leading to states of deep mental absorption known as jhanas. While the full jhana states are advanced meditative attainments, the essence of right concentration for relaxation is the ability to keep the mind fixed gently on a single, peaceful object, most often the sensation of the breath, long enough for the background mental chatter to completely subside. It is the deep, steady gaze that stabilizes the inner world, turning off the continuous, low-level mental static that otherwise interferes with the brain's transition into deep wave sleep. Cultivating this profound stillness requires letting go of the need to control the outcome and simply resting the attention, moment after moment, on the subtle, rhythmically calming flow of the breath moving in and out of the body. As the mind anchors itself more deeply in this single point of focus, all external disturbances begin to recede, and the internal struggle ceases entirely, replaced by a profound, pervasive sense of peace and unity. Feel your focus narrowing, shrinking down until all that remains is the cool passage of air at the nostrils or the gentle movement beneath the ribs, ushering in a quietude deeper and richer than any mere absence of sound. This sustained concentration leads to a dissolution of the perceived boundaries between the observer and the observed, fostering a state of effortless presence where the need for self to manage or worry completely vanishes. When the mind is perfectly concentrated, there is no space left for anxiety or fear to enter, only the expansive, silent awareness of existence itself, a state often described as the most restful experience possible, even more profound than dreamless sleep. Rest here, in this unwavering focus, allowing the body to feel entirely supported and the mind to become crystalline clear, suspended in the comforting, unwavering stability of the present moment. Let us now allow these practices of mindfulness and concentration to merge seamlessly with the quiet process of surrendering to rest, recognizing that every gentle observation, every returning of attention to the breath, is a step deeper into tranquility. As we move toward understanding the foundational truth of impermanence, allow the mind to relax its grip on definition and identity, trusting that the stillness we cultivate tonight is both your refuge and the truest expression of the disciplined path, providing a deep, safe harbor for your consciousness to find its deepest peace. Anicca, the teaching of impermanence. Having settled the mind through the stabilizing practices of right mindfulness and right concentration, we now turn our attention to one of the most fundamental and profoundly liberating insights of the Dharma, Anicca, the universal truth of impermanence. This teaching asserts that absolutely everything that arises, from the smallest thought, the grandest star, the most intense pleasure, and the deepest pain, is composite, temporary, and subject to continuous change and decay. This radical truth, when fully accepted, becomes the most powerful solvent for anxiety, recognizing that the very nature of existence is a ceaseless flow, an endless series of beginnings and endings, none of which can be fixed or grasped. Take a slow, deep breath and feel the truth of impermanence within the body right now. The inhale is already dissolving into the exhale. The feeling of warmth gives way to coolness. The moment of stillness is already passing into the next moment. The light filtering through the curtains, even if faint, is slowly changing its angle and intensity as the earth turns. The distant sounds of the night, a car, a bird, the hum of the house, arise, persist for a second, and then vanish forever. Nothing holds still. And this recognition is key to releasing the mental effort required to maintain a fixed reality, allowing the mind to rest in the effortless dynamism of the present. The suffering we experience, known as dukkha, is not caused by change itself, but by our fierce, stubborn resistance to it. Our constant, exhausting attempt to hold on to moments of pleasure and push away moments of pain. An effort doomed to failure, because the flow of time respects no boundaries or desires. Imagine standing on a riverbank, desperately trying to cup and hold the flowing water in your hands. The water inevitably leaks away, leaving you grasping emptiness, yet you feel compelled to try again. The teaching of Anicca reminds us to simply step back from the river and observe the beautiful, constant movement without intervention, allowing the mind to cease its futile striving. When we truly internalize the deep comfort of impermanence, the mind finds incredible rest in the knowledge that every difficult state, every sharp edge of worry and every physical discomfort is guaranteed to pass. Just as the darkest phase of the moon must give way to the light, so too must the heavy blanket of sleeplessness eventually lift, revealing the dawn of a new, different moment. This understanding transforms our experience of hardship. Instead of viewing a challenging moment as a permanent affliction, we recognize it as a temporary phenomenon, giving us the patience and softness required to simply observe its passage without adding the second arrow of mental resistance. The breath itself serves as our most immediate, tangible, and available model of impermanence. Watch closely as the breath enters the lungs, reaches its apex of fullness, pauses for the briefest, exquisite moment of transition, and then gracefully releases itself completely back into the world. There is no clinging to the inhale, no resistance to the exhale, only a continuous, perfect yielding cycle. Let your awareness of your own breathing teach you how to live and rest in this effortless flux, recognizing that life is simply the continuous wave-like motion of arising and dissolving, demanding nothing of you but observation. Furthermore, the teaching of Anika applies deeply to our sense of self. We are not a static entity. We are a complex collection of continuously changing components, a constantly regenerating body, fleeting feelings, temporary perceptions, momentary volitions, and shifting consciousness. There is no permanent solid self that must be defended or worried about through the night. This insight allows the ego's vigilance to relax, recognizing that the worries plaguing the mind are merely transient, impersonal mental objects without the inherent substance we mistakenly attribute to them. The great Zen masters often use poetic imagery to convey this fluidity, comparing reality to the soft mist on a mountain or the swift current of a stream, always the same stream, yet never the same water. Rest now in the acceptance that you too are this ever-changing stream. There is no fixed you that needs fixing or protecting tonight, only the restful, quiet motion of life flowing through this moment. Allow the stillness of the room to reflect the deep stillness of a mind that has ceased struggling against the necessary, beautiful tide of change. When we cease fighting the inevitability of change, the tremendous energy previously spent on resistance is reclaimed, fueling a profound, spontaneous relaxation that permeates the entire body. The muscles that tightened in fear of loss or pain now have permission to release, knowing that whatever comes next, it too will pass. This acceptance brings a quality of deep restfulness, a surrender that allows the pillows and mattress to feel infinitely softer, the darkness infinitely more comforting, as you merge gently with the flow of the night. Tonight, as you feel yourself drifting, recognize that the worries and projects currently swirling in the edges of your mind are merely forms of thought, utterly lacking in permanence or substance. They are temporary mental echoes of the day, certain to dissolve completely in the restorative silence of deep sleep. Allow them to float past your awareness like clouds on a summer breeze, knowing they have no power to arrest the steady movement of time or to disturb the essential, deep peace that lies at the core of your being. Let the truth of Anika guide you now into the deepest rest. Permit your body to change its posture. Permit your thoughts to cease their chatter, and permit your consciousness to dissolve gently into the vast ocean of sleep, trusting completely that every moment is new, every sensation is fresh, and that the unwavering truth of change will carry you safely through the night and into the renewal of the morning. Anatta, the doctrine of non-self. Building upon the stabilizing insight of Anika, the impermanence of all things, we now approach a corollary teaching that offers an even deeper level of personal liberation and rest. Anatta, the doctrine of non-self. This is perhaps the most profound and sometimes challenging teaching in the Buddhist tradition, asserting that within this stream of continuous change, this body, these thoughts, these feelings, there is no fixed, permanent, or independently existing self, soul, or I that remains static or in control. Instead, what we mistakenly call ourselves is merely a collection of 5 constantly shifting energies, or aggregates, skandhas, that interact and give the illusion of a solid, enduring entity, a mere concept woven together by the threads of memory and expectation. This realization is deeply comforting, especially when preparing for sleep, because it releases us from the relentless, exhausting burden of maintaining and defending that illusory, separate self, which is the root cause of much nocturnal anxiety and restlessness. The worries that keep us awake, concerns about status, reputation, past failures, or future challenges, are all rooted in the mistaken belief that there is a permanent me who must manage, achieve, or protect its boundaries against the world. Allow the heavy recognition that the self you are trying so hard to care for and control is actually just a momentary constellation of sensation and thought to gently soften the tightness in your chest and the tension held in your brow. The 5 aggregates: form, body, feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, perception, recognition, mental formations, volitions, intentions, and consciousness, awareness itself, are always in flux, like the separate instruments in an orchestra which, when played together, create the harmonious and ever-changing symphony we call life. Tonight, as you feel your physical form sinking deeper into the soft support beneath you, notice that your body is not a fixed object, but a process of breath flowing, blood circulating, and cells regenerating, pure process without a permanent owner. Relaxing the idea of a fixed self allows these processes to function unimpeded, guiding your physical form toward the deepest possible state of recuperation and rest. When we experience a strong emotion, like anxiety about tomorrow, the Anatta teaching prompts us to see that anxiety not as my anxiety, belonging to a solid I, but simply as an impersonal mental event arising and dissolving within consciousness. We practice observing the feeling of restlessness itself, the rapid heart rate, the fluttering thoughts, without immediately labeling it or clinging to it as part of our core identity. By taking this step back, we stop adding the fuel of personal investment, allowing the transient emotion to dissipate naturally, just as steam rises and vanishes into the air without leaving a trace behind. This insight into non-self is fundamentally compassionate, liberating us from the harsh self-criticism that often plagues the mind just before sleep. If there is no permanent, fixed I to be blamed, then the mistakes of the past were simply actions driven by temporary configurations of the skandhas, past conditioning, momentary perceptions, and feelings that have long since passed. Let the idea that you must achieve perfection or fix a flawed identity melt away, like snow exposed to the warm sun, trusting that the true nature of your awareness is vast, open, and untouched by the temporary shadows cast by the aggregates. Consider the sensation of the pillow cradling your head. Is that sensation you, or is it merely a fleeting contact between 2 impermanent forms? Consider the thought that flits across your mind about a task left undone. Is that thought you, Or is it simply an electrical impulse, a mental formation arising from memory? By diligently separating the awareness from the content, we realize that the awareness itself is the vast, silent space in which all these things appear and disappear, the empty stage upon which the drama of the aggregates plays out, utterly untouched by the drama itself. Rest now in the immense relief of not having to be anyone or anything specific. Allow the weight of personal history and future expectation to lift away from your shoulders, recognizing that the concepts that define your wakeful identity are irrelevant in the profound, healing stillness of the night. There is no enduring self that needs to worry about waking up refreshed or achieving anything. There is only the restful flow of experience. Trust that the deep wisdom of the body knows exactly how to rest and repair itself when the striving, conceptual mind finally lays down its heavy load. The true self, if one must use the word, is this boundless, open awareness that perceives the aggregates without being identified with them. It is the quiet presence listening to this very narration, the unmoving point of peace at the very center of the storm of experience. Allow your focus to gently detach from the racing thoughts and the clinging senses, resting instead in the profound, neutral stability of pure consciousness. Feel the boundaries of your individuality soften and dissolve, merging with the vast, encompassing quietness of the surrounding space. Embracing the doctrine of anatta is the ultimate form of surrender, the final letting go of the need to resist, control, or define. It is the compassionate permission to allow your entire system, body, mind, and consciousness to simply be in its natural state of flux, free from the tension of having to maintain a fixed identity through the darkness. Sink deeper into the mattress with the comforting knowledge that the self is light, ephemeral, and requires no heavy effort to sustain itself, freeing you entirely for restorative, deep, and dreamless sleep, karma, and volition. Moving from the deep existential freedom offered by the teaching of non-self, we anchor our understanding of the moral universe with the concept of karma, a principle often misunderstood as divine fate or external punishment, but which, within the Dharma, is understood purely as the natural law of cause and effect, driven specifically by volition, intention. Karma, derived from the Sanskrit word for action, is not about destiny predetermined by the stars. It is the radical recognition that every intentional mental, verbal, or physical action we perform creates a corresponding energetic potential that will inevitably ripen and bear fruit in the future, thereby placing the immense power of shaping our experience directly into our hands, moment by intentional moment. This teaching is profoundly empowering and deeply relevant to our state of rest, reminding us that even the intention with which we settle down to sleep, whether driven by anxious striving or peaceful surrender, creates a karmic signature that influences the quality of our repose. The Buddha taught that it is the intention, cetana, that is the true engine of karma. Actions performed mindlessly, accidentally, or without moral volition, while having consequences, do not carry the same powerful karmic imprint as those actions undertaken with clear moral purpose, whether wholesome or unwholesome. This emphasizes the immense importance of cultivating skillful, compassionate intentions throughout our lives, and especially in this final moment before sleep. When our minds are filled with unwholesome intentions, thoughts rooted in greed, aversion, or delusion, those actions plant seeds that will eventually ripen as suffering or restlessness, even in the stillness of the night. Conversely, every action rooted in generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom plants a seed that ripens into future ease, peace, and clarity. Tonight, as you lie here, take a moment to intentionally cultivate the wholesome volition of profound kindness toward yourself, wishing yourself deep rest, tranquility, and freedom from all physical and mental discomfort. The beauty of karma is that its field of action is always the present moment, meaning we are never victims of a past that cannot be influenced. While past volitional actions set the stage for our current experiences, the present moment is where we possess absolute freedom to choose our response and set new causes in motion. If the mind is currently restless, we don't punish ourselves for past unskillfulness. Instead, we intentionally choose the skillful action of gentle breathing, non-judgmental observation, and soft acceptance, thereby cultivating the immediate cause for peace and mental equilibrium right now. Allow the concept of karma to remove any sense of fatalistic helplessness from your process of falling asleep. Your inability to sleep instantly is not a punishment handed down by a vengeful universe. It is simply the ripening of previous unskillful habits, or the consequence of mental activity carried over from the day. And just as this result has arisen, you now have the power, through the intentional cultivation of stillness and patience, to create the causes for future rest and profound stillness, changing the karmic trajectory of your night in this very moment. To further deepen your rest, we practice cultivating right livelihood, which is the karmic discipline of ensuring that the way we earn our living does not involve causing harm to others or ourselves. While this may seem distant from the bedroom, the mind cannot truly rest if the conscience is disturbed by actions taken during the day that contradicted our ethical principles. If there are unresolved ethical tensions, simply acknowledge them with the intention to address them with wisdom and compassion tomorrow, creating a karmic closure that allows the mind to feel safe and ethically sound as it surrenders control. Rest in the confidence that you are not powerless, but are an active participant in shaping the flow of your experience. Every conscious, compassionate breath you take right now, every choice to let go of a worrying thought, is an act of skillful karma, a deliberate planting of the seed of peace that will guarantee a beneficial ripening, either tonight in the form of deep, restorative sleep, or in the peacefulness of your awareness tomorrow morning. Trust the process of cause and effect. Tonight, let your final intentional action be one of complete surrender, motivated by the desire for healing rest. Let the volition to release all effort and striving become your guiding principle. Feel the weight of this skillful intention settling over your mind and body, softening every rigid edge. The intention to rest is the action. The resultant peace is the inevitable fruition of this pure, wise choice. Dependent origination, paticca samuppada. Having explored the individual power of intention through the lens of karma, we now turn our contemplative focus toward one of the most profound and encompassing teachings of the Buddha. Dependent origination, known in Pali as paticca samuppada. This intricate doctrine elucidates the fundamental interconnectedness of all phenomena, teaching that nothing exists independently, in isolation, or by chance. Rather, everything arises, exists, and ceases only in dependence upon a multitude of preceding conditions and causes, forming a vast, seamless web of mutual dependency that defines reality. This means that the sensation of warmth beneath the blanket, the distant sound of the wind through the eaves, and even the fleeting thought of what tomorrow holds, are all manifestations that have arisen due to specific, preceding conditions, rather than being solid, self-existing entities. The primary chain of dependent origination details how ignorance ultimately leads to suffering, tracking the 12 links that explain the perpetuation of the cycle of birth and death, samsara. But its core lesson for us tonight lies in its radical message of non-autonomy. Recognize how your very ability to lie here in peace is utterly dependent on conditions outside of your immediate control, the stable foundation of your home, the quietude of the late hour, the simple fact that you have a soft bed to rest upon, and the health of your own nervous system that allows the body to relax its guard. By fully appreciating this vast network of support, the demanding isolation of the ego softens, and the striving mind can finally relinquish the heavy burden of having to manage everything alone, allowing a deep, systemic surrender to take place. As you breathe slowly and deeply, feel the continuous flow of interdependent processes within your own body, observing the way the oxygen you take in is dependent upon the leaves and forests that breathed out the air, which in turn is dependent on the sunlight that fuels the photosynthesis, all the way back to the cosmic dust that formed the planet. This awareness of profound interrelation diminishes the sensation of being a separate, vulnerable entity struggling against the world, allowing you to rest in the secure knowledge that you are inextricably woven into the fabric of the universe, constantly supported by countless processes both visible and invisible, leading to a profound sense of existential security that aids sleep. This teaching also offers a crucial insight into overcoming mental suffering and the restlessness of the mind, because if an experience of anxiety is not a fixed thing, but merely a condition that arises dependently, it means that if the conditions that fuel it are removed or altered, the anxiety must inevitably cease. The stressful thought that keeps repeating in your mind, for example, is dependent on memory, on judgment, on past habit, and on the energy you are currently giving it. When you withdraw the fuel of attention and gently shift your focus to the purely non-conceptual sensation of the body relaxing, the condition for the thought's perpetuation is removed, and the mental structure collapses under the weight of its own impermanent nature. Let this understanding of cosmic interdependence quiet the internal conversation, allowing you to trust the wisdom of natural cycles, just as the moon depends upon the earth and the tide depends upon the moon. There is no need to grasp at a fixed outcome or resist the current condition of your mind. Simply allow the moment to be exactly as it is, knowing that even this moment of mild wakefulness is dependent upon causes that are already receding into the past and will inevitably give rise to the restful darkness of deep sleep, entirely without your conscious effort or intervention. Rest within this vast, supportive web, feeling the absolute safety of being exactly where you are, exactly when you are, a necessary and beautiful part of this intricate, dependent dance of existence, the practice of metta, loving kindness. Having established the stabilizing view of our non-separate existence and the law of cause and effect, we now turn to the most vital and active cultivation necessary for true internal peace: the development of metta, or loving kindness, and its close cousin, karuna, which is compassion. These foundational spiritual qualities are not mere sentiments or passive feelings. They are potent, intentional mental formations, acts of skillful karma that actively restructure the mind away from the suffering roots of aversion and fear, replacing them with a boundless, warm-hearted wishing of well-being that promotes an immediate, deep state of relaxation and mental openness, entirely suitable for preparing the mind for the vulnerable surrender into sleep. The practice begins, as all skillful practice must, with cultivating this unconditioned kindness towards oneself, recognizing that the primary source of nocturnal restlessness often stems from the harsh inner critic, the voice of self-judgment and dissatisfaction that refuses to allow the self to simply rest in peace. Tonight, let the metta practice be a gentle internal embrace, softening the hard edges of self-demand and allowing yourself to be exactly as you are, without any prerequisite of productivity or perfection. Repeat the traditional phrases softly in the silence of your mind, breathing them into the center of your heart. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be peaceful. May I be at ease. Feeling the sincerity and warmth of these intentions, dissolving any internalized guilt or anxiety. As this warmth of self-acceptance begins to spread and permeate your physical form, notice the calming effect it has on the tension residing in your shoulders, the tightness in your jaw, and the subtle clenching in your stomach. Understanding that these physical manifestations of stress are often simply the body's reaction to mental friction. Metta, by dissolving that friction, acts as a profound somatic relaxant. Allow the compassionate intention to flood your entire being, from the crown of your head down to the tips of your toes, feeling the entire body sighing into the mattress, releasing any remaining resistance to the deep gravitational pull of the earth. Once the mind is saturated with this sense of internal security and kindness, we gently expand the circle of metta outward, moving next to those who are easy to love, family members, close friends, or even beloved pets, sending them the same pure, unconditioned wishes for safety, health, and profound peace. Visualize them resting as calmly and serenely as you desire to rest yourself, allowing the energy of your good wishes to be completely pure, unattached to any expectation of return or change in their behavior, thereby cultivating the purest form of generosity of spirit, which is inherently soothing to the heart. The true test of metta and its ultimate power for peace comes when we extend this benevolent wishing toward those who are neutral, those we rarely think about, the person who delivered the mail today, the stranger driving by your window, or even the neighbors sleeping nearby. By intentionally cultivating kindness towards those who are irrelevant to our personal narratives, we dismantle the mind's habit of categorization and judgment, fostering a sense of shared humanity and collective tranquility that transcends the boundaries of self and other, helping the mind to settle into a state of deep, impersonal calm. Finally, in the true spirit of boundless compassion, if you feel capable and settled, gently extend the wish of peace toward those with whom you have difficulty, or even those who have caused you pain, knowing that their suffering, like yours, stems ultimately from ignorance and unskillful choices. This act is not about condoning past actions, but about releasing the heavy burden of resentment and aversion from your own heart, recognizing that their peace is also a condition for your own uninterrupted rest, freeing the mind entirely from the reactive cycle of dislike. Rest now in this vast, encompassing field of goodwill, knowing that nothing can disturb the deep peace that arises from a heart dedicated to kindness. The 3 jewels, refuge. As we settle further into this deep well of quietude and kindness, it is time to contemplate the profound and foundational practice of taking refuge in the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. This ancient and deeply comforting practice is not a momentary act of faith, but a continual conscious orientation of the heart and mind toward the path of liberation, offering the weary traveler a secure haven from the storms of the world and the chaotic turbulence of the internal landscape. By turning toward the jewels, we acknowledge that true lasting peace is not found in external possessions, shifting relationships, or the relentless pursuit of temporary pleasures, but rests firmly within the unshakable framework of ethical living, wisdom, and spiritual community, providing a stable foundation upon which your mind can finally relax its vigilance and prepare for the restorative darkness of the night. The first jewel is the Buddha, which represents the enlightened one himself, Siddhartha Gautama, but more importantly, represents the potential for awakening that resides within every single being, including you, lying here, listening in the stillness. We take refuge in the Buddha as the ultimate teacher and the perfect example of human capability, a living proof that it is possible to fully transcend suffering and reach a state of complete, unshakable tranquility, even while navigating the complexities of the world. Visualize the image of the Buddha now, serene and deeply centered, not as a deity to be worshipped from afar, but as a compassionate mentor whose silent example radiates a profound sense of calm assurance, guiding your own consciousness toward its highest potential for peace and wisdom. The second jewel is the Dharma, the universal law and the body of teachings the Buddha discovered and articulated, the profound map to freedom, including the noble truths and the eightfold path we have explored together. Taking refuge in the Dharma means accepting the reality of impermanence, anicca, and non-self, anatta, and actively dedicating your life to aligning your actions and thoughts with these liberating truths. Tonight, the Dharma is the stable, unchanging bedrock beneath the flow of your internal experience, the realization that while your thoughts may drift like clouds and your emotions may rise and fall like the tide, the essential laws governing reality are constant and reliable, offering a profound reassurance that relieves the need for frantic control. The third jewel is the Sangha, the community of practitioners, both those who have achieved high states of realization and those, like ourselves, who are humbly walking the path together, offering support, encouragement, and ethical guidance. Though you may be lying alone in the silence of your room, you are not isolated. You are part of an unbroken lineage of seekers stretching back 2,500 years, connected by the shared aspiration for peace and liberation. Feel the warmth of this invisible community surrounding you now, a network of compassionate beings throughout time and space, reminding you that your struggle is shared and your deepest aspiration is understood, allowing the solitary burdens of the day to dissipate into the collective strength of the Sangha. The act of formally taking refuge is a conscious turning away from the false refuges of addiction, materialism, ego, or conflict, and instead placing trust in these three dependable sources of guidance. It is a promise to yourself to prioritize inner development and ethical conduct, recognizing that true shelter is found not in running from difficulty, but in cultivating the inner strength and clarity to meet all circumstances with wisdom and equanimity. This turning of the heart generates a distinct energetic shift, a feeling of safety that is utterly independent of external conditions, deeply relaxing the core musculature and settling the restless chatter of the mind. Consider how fear arises when we perceive ourselves as utterly vulnerable and separate from any dependable support system. The practice of refuge counteracts this isolation by firmly placing us within the universal Dharma, making the ultimate truth our steady, reliable anchor. When worries about health, finances, or relationships flare up in the mind, the usual disturbances that impede sleep, we can softly remind ourselves, I take refuge in the Dharma, knowing that all compounded things are impermanent, and thus, the worry itself is a transient phenomenon that cannot fundamentally touch the awakened potential within. This realization of deep structural safety allows the nervous system to completely power down. Let us now focus on the internal manifestation of the Buddha jewel, the radiant clarity that lies dormant beneath the layers of confusion and habituated thought. This inherent potential for wakefulness is the light source within your own consciousness, untouched by the day's stress or tomorrow's pending tasks. Visualize this inner Buddha presence as a gentle, unwavering flame, a deep source of calm wisdom residing right at the center of your being, perhaps felt as a quiet warmth in the region of the heart or a smooth spaciousness behind the eyes. Resting your awareness upon this inherent purity is profoundly restorative, soothing the aggressive striving that often keeps the mind agitated long after the body has settled. The Dharma, too, is immediately present in the simple reality of the moment, the soft feeling of the sheets, the natural rhythm of your breath, the sheer fact of your existence right here and now. This immediate reality, unadorned by interpretation or judgment, is the Dharma revealing itself. There is nothing to achieve and nowhere else to go. The truth is already manifesting in the silent perfection of this late hour. Allow the weight of this understanding to press you gently deeper into the mattress, releasing any subconscious tension related to seeking or searching, as the great truth is already embracing you fully. And finally, feel the Sangha not just as people, but as the quiet atmosphere of shared spiritual aspiration, the invisible current of compassion that flows between all beings dedicated to reducing suffering. This feeling of communal support is deeply reassuring, allowing your shoulders to soften and your jaw to unlock, knowing that you are merely one wave in a vast, compassionate ocean of consciousness. This collective energy acts as a profound lullaby, calming the self-obsessed narratives of the ego and permitting a deeper, more profound surrender to the currents of rest, carrying you gently toward the threshold of dreamless sleep. Rest securely, embraced by the three jewels. The Heart Sutra's essence. Having found solace in the three jewels, we now turn our attention to one of the deepest, most subtle, and ultimately most liberating teachings of the Mahayana tradition. The wisdom encapsulated within the Heart Sutra, a brief text famed for its profound statement on the nature of sunyata, or emptiness. Do not let the word emptiness cause any alarm or conceptual struggle. Tonight, we approach this idea not as a terrifying void or an existential threat, but as the most comforting and radical insight into why nothing in your life, not your stress, not your body, and certainly not your identity, is solid, fixed, or inherently threatening. This teaching aims to dismantle the rigid structures of the mind that prevent surrender, paving the path directly into the spaciousness of deep, unconditioned rest. The famous line, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form," means that everything we perceive as having solid, fixed form, your physical body, the walls of your room, the problem you worried about today, is actually empty of any permanent, self-sufficient, unchanging essence. It is not that these things don't exist, but that they exist only as temporary, dependent configurations, like patterns in water or clouds in the sky. When you look at your own hand, it appears solid, but upon closer examination, it is empty of a fixed handness. It is merely a complex arrangement of cells, atoms, and energetic processes, all constantly changing and dependent upon everything else, providing an immediate opportunity for the mind to loosen its grasp on the perceived solidity of the world. This wisdom is directly applicable to the physical discomforts or mental anxieties that may persist as you lie here, because the anxiety itself is empty of inherent existence. It is merely a compounded phenomenon, arising from specific causes and conditions, and therefore it is completely incapable of remaining fixed or permanent. The physical sensations you label tension are empty of a fixed tensionness. They are merely sensations, vibrations, warmth, pressure, which, when observed with this profound understanding of emptiness, lose their power to bind you. The realization of sunyata dissolves the solidity of the struggle, allowing the mind to simply observe the flow of arising and passing without engaging in the tiring activity of trying to fix or fight what isn't truly there. Let the understanding of sunyata quiet the judgmental mind, recognizing that the very person who judges and the object being judged are both equally devoid of fixed identity. There is no permanent I that is failing, and no permanent thing that is causing distress. There are only processes flowing within the vast, open space of awareness. Feel the sheer relief of realizing that you are not required to maintain a permanent self or defend a rigid point of view. This profound relaxation of the ego's mandate releases deep habitual tensions in the face and neck, encouraging the muscles to lengthen and soften into the cushion. The essence of the Heart Sutra emphasizes the 5 skandhas, or aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, are all equally empty. This means the feeling of wakefulness, the thought of tomorrow's meeting, and the very perception of the quiet darkness are all transient, airy, and utterly non-substantial when viewed through the lens of wisdom. They are like fleeting reflections on a still pond, beautiful and observable, but possessing no independent reality that could ensnare you or prevent the onset of sleep. Allow yourself to rest precisely in the recognition that these mental phenomena are inherently light and temporary. To rest in emptiness is to rest in the secure knowledge that since nothing is permanent, nothing can truly be lost, and therefore there is nothing left to fear or desperately hold on to. The mind that clings is the mind that suffers, but the mind that rests in sunyata is naturally unburdened, like an open sky that is untouched by the clouds that pass through it. Tonight, cultivate the feeling of the open sky of your own consciousness, vast, boundless, and utterly immune to the temporary dramas playing out within the field of awareness. This radical freedom from fixed reality is the ultimate medicine for insomnia, which is often caused by the mental insistence that things should be otherwise than they are. When we recognize that our expectations, desires, and anxieties are all empty configurations, they stop casting the long shadows of resistance that keep us awake. Simply allow the mind to become expansive, open, and utterly non-grasping, resting effortlessly in the natural spacious silence that underlies all compounded phenomena. Rest now, cradled in the profound, boundless space of non-fixity, knowing that this moment, like every moment, is utterly unique, unrepeatable, and yet empty of any permanent defining characteristic. The noise of the day fades into the distant hum of the universe, and the self-identity that strives for control softens into the vast, warm neutrality of being. There is nothing to attain, nothing to protect, and nowhere to go. Simply dissolve into the sheer, quiet reality of the present. The Farmer and the Storm, Zen Parable. As we drift further along the river of deep tranquility, we invite a simple but profound Zen parable to settle into the quiet corners of the mind, illustrating the great wisdom of non-attachment and non-reaction that we have cultivated through the Dharma. Picture now an ancient, weathered farmer living high upon a misty mountain slope, whose life was marked by unpredictable seasons and sudden violent weather changes that perpetually threatened his meager crops. Yet he faced every event with an astonishing, almost unnerving stillness. His neighbors often gathered, their faces etched with anxiety, to bemoan a sudden frost, a blight on the rice, or a severe drought, desperately seeking his counsel. But the old farmer never offered solutions, only a quiet, gentle statement that became his mantra. We shall see. One year, a devastating storm swept through the valley, tearing through the wooden supports of the rice terraces, flooding the fields, and wiping out a huge portion of the expected harvest, leading the neighbors to wail and lament the cruel caprice of fate and the impending hunger of the coming winter. They rushed to the farmer's hut, predicting ruin and starvation, begging him to share their distress, but the old man simply sat by his worn wooden table, sipping his thin tea, observing the rain as it drummed against the eaves with calm attention. When pressed about the total destruction of his crops and the seeming end of his prosperity, he merely paused, his gaze fixed distantly on the cascading water, and repeated his soft, accepting phrase, "We shall see." Later that season, a great plague afflicted the region, sparing the farmer's land only because the devastating storm had effectively washed away the initial vectors of disease, leaving his remaining patch of grain untouched and unusually healthy. The neighbors were suddenly overjoyed, recognizing that the very disaster they had cursed had, in an unexpected turn, become their salvation, a stark reversal of fortune that they celebrated with loud, exuberant praise for the farmer's good luck. They rushed back up the mountain path, full of boisterous relief, celebrating his apparent blessing and marveling at his fortune. But still, the farmer listened patiently to their wild pronouncements of success, offered them water, and quietly concluded, with an unwavering sense of detachment, "We shall see." This story illuminates the core Buddhist teaching that the labels we place on events, good or bad, lucky or unlucky, are merely temporary mental constructions that cause immense suffering by creating resistance to the present reality. When we identify a situation as a problem, we immediately contract around it, resisting the flow of life and generating internal friction that prevents sleep and peace. The farmer's response, "We shall see," is a profound act of mindfulness, recognizing that the outcome of any event is ultimately unknowable, and that the suffering lies not in the event itself, but in the immediate emotional interpretation and categorization we impose upon it. Allow the quiet wisdom of the farmer to permeate your own experience now, releasing the need to categorize the thoughts or sensations arising as you settle into bed. If a sudden memory arises, do not label it unwanted distraction or important reflection. Simply observe it, let it pass, and gently whisper the old man's phrase, "We shall see." If you feel a restless twitch or a moment of impatience regarding the time, recognize that even these internal movements are just temporary weather patterns in the vast sky of your awareness, incapable of defining your ultimate well-being or preventing the deep rest that awaits you. The farmer's deep acceptance stemmed from his understanding of anicca, the impermanence we discussed earlier, recognizing that fortune and misfortune, joy and sorrow, are two sides of the same rapidly spinning coin, eternally interdependent and flowing into one another. When we realize that the seemingly devastating event might contain the seeds of future growth, and the exhilarating success might lead to complacency or future loss, the emotional grip loosens significantly, neutralizing the high-stakes drama that keeps the cortisol flowing and the brain active. Sink into the comforting neutrality of the "we shall see" perspective. This parable is the ultimate invitation to radical acceptance right here in this moment of pre-sleep, encouraging you to step back from the exhausting project of trying to control or judge the subtle processes of falling asleep. Stop trying to make yourself sleep, stop judging your alertness, and stop resisting the present quality of the moment, whatever it may be. Simply be the detached observer, the quiet farmer sitting peacefully on the mountain, watching the internal storm of thoughts and sensations wash over you without being moved by them, knowing that every single perception is a temporary configuration that will soon pass. Imagine the peace that comes from surrendering the outcome. You do not need to know if you will sleep soundly tonight, if tomorrow will be successful, or if your long-term plans will unfold as hoped. The simple liberating truth is, we shall see. This relinquishment of mental control acts as a powerful sedative for the striving, anxious ego, allowing the body's natural ancient mechanism for rest to finally take over without interference. Embrace the uncertainty as an opening to peace, knowing that the most restful position is one of profound, non-judgmental equanimity. Let the final resonance of this teaching be one of lightness and freedom, allowing the wisdom of the Zen master to softly dismantle any remaining tension held in the muscles of the chest or the forehead. The moment is perfect exactly as it is, because it is inherently impermanent and empty of fixed identity. Its future state is uncertain, and that is precisely where true, effortless relaxation resides. Rest now in this spacious uncertainty, trusting the silent, internal journey. We have traveled far on this introspective journey tonight, exploring the essential wisdom of the Buddhist path, from the discomfort of dukkha to the liberating emptiness of sunyata. And now we arrive softly at the final threshold, the moment of deep surrender, where the teachings cease to be concepts and become the very ground beneath your rest. Allow the accumulated weight of all these gentle insights to press you further down into the welcoming depths of your mattress, integrating the quiet understanding that the profound safety you seek is not found externally, but resides securely within the realization of the Dharma itself, the constant, reliable truth of impermanence and interconnectedness. This wisdom is your softest blanket and your firmest refuge. As the physical body melts into stillness, consciously release any final anchors of the day, the lingering thoughts of what was said or what was left undone, the worries about future obligations, or the subtle tensions held stubbornly in the jaw or the hands. We acknowledge these thoughts, but we do not engage with them, recognizing them now as merely insubstantial clouds passing through the wide open sky of your awareness, without any power to fix or define your deepest self. Let the breath move gently, without effort, simply allowing the rise and fall of the chest to serve as your final, soothing contact point with the pure reality of the present moment, anchoring you securely in the here and now. Tonight, you are resting not just in a bed, but in the unwavering truth of non-self, anatta, realizing that the striving, anxious I that often keeps the mind agitated is merely a collection of temporary elements, leaving no permanent core to defend or worry over. This realization dissolves the burden of personal responsibility for the entire universe, granting a profound, compassionate permission to simply be without judgment, without performance, and without need for immediate action. Feel the profound relief in your shoulders and back as this immense weight of self-concern is completely lifted, allowing the nervous system to transition fully into its deeply restorative, parasympathetic state. Let us briefly bring to mind the spirit of metta, loving kindness, we cultivated, extending a final, compassionate wish for your own peace and well-being. acknowledging the strength and courage it takes to pursue inner peace, even in the stillness of the night. Whisper softly to yourself, "May I be peaceful, may I be safe, may I rest without struggle," allowing this gentle intention to settle into the very core of your being, wrapping you in a warmth of self-acceptance that is conducive to the deepest, most rejuvenating sleep. This radical kindness is the final act of non-resistance required for true rest. And before you drift completely away, remember the quiet harbor we have cultivated here together, a space built on ancient wisdom and shared aspiration for peace. If you found solace in these teachings and in the cadence of this reflective journey, please consider joining our growing Sangha by softly clicking the subscription button, ensuring that this harbor remains stable and welcoming for all those seeking refuge from the restless storms of the mind. Your presence and support maintain this quiet sanctuary, allowing the gentle light of the Dharma to reach further into the world, offering comfort to many others who also seek this profound nighttime stillness. Now, as the external world fades completely and the boundary between wakefulness and dream begins to blur, dissolve fully into the present moment, trusting that the wisdom of the Buddha, the structure of the Dharma, and the support of the Sangha are holding you gently and securely. There is nothing left to hold on to, nothing to accomplish, and nowhere else to be. Simply let go, surrender to the inevitable current of rest, and allow your consciousness to sink effortlessly into the deepest, most healing repose. May your rest be profound, restorative, and deeply peaceful. Good night and sleep well.